Absolute Martian Manhunter, issue 9. Deniz Camp writing with Javier Rodriguez on the R. All right. Every time I read one of these, I'm like, okay, what am I in for? And like they kind of wow me every time, because it's like, and it's always because there's always this little thing where in the first couple of pages I'm like, okay, what did we set up last time? Because like I mean I have that with every book where I'm like, it takes me a couple of pages to be like, oh yeah, that's what the last couple of issues were. Okay, right, everything's like reset in my brain and I'm back in the flow of it. But with this book, because it's got such weird abstract concepts, it's just like it's like my brain has to just work a little bit harder, and I'm like, oh, this is what we're doing. That's right.
Yeah, there's so much going on here that I feel like this is the one of the books I feel like I need to read twice before we talk about it, and I just don't have time for it, to do it twice, because there's so much going on here, and like I know ultimately that Despair the Zero, or we'll just Despero because it's going to be easier to say. Yeah. I know he's not supposed to be depression, right? Because that's the whole anti-life, and that's been established, all this other stuff. But a lot of what Jones is going through with what Despero is telling him is a lot of felt to me like a lot of the stuff you see, or at least I've experienced going through therapy and whatnot, and about the negative self-talk and, reframing the world so it's not like this. And this is all the dark side of that, right? Yeah. Well, Despair Zero is telling John Jones, that all the stuff is happening behind his back and he can't trust anybody, right? And that's just a bad thought, right? Those are the stuff that when you go through mental health stuff that you're told not to focus on, and because that's not what the world is. And it's like this concept is completely blinding him to what's actually going on. And the way that we see it is like it's telling him what he's seeing with his own eyes is not going on, right? So there's a lot of that going on here.
Yeah, I mean the Sparrow stuff is very interesting, and the whole book starts off with this premise of the Martian saying we are weaker apart. We're both vulnerable because we're not together. That being John and Jean, right? John and the Martian. And you see that the Martian is being operated on by the characters who kidnapped him last week. And it took me a minute to remember that those were just kind of like creations that the kid was playing with his toys. So later on, when you see him being operated on and the kid's literally playing in a game of Operation, it's just that the Martian's now the game of Operation, was very, again, visually just very creative and really super smart. So yeah, but basically, before we get to the therapy stuff, John is looking for the Martian. It's been a week since he's been in his head, and he's concerned. So he's going to people who have had the Martian in their dreams and trying to talk to them. And he's still hearing their thoughts. He's still getting the multicolored, thoughts coming out of their heads. And he's trying to talk to them. But after a page or two, we're reminded that this other entity is there. The Sparrow's there, and he's unlike the Martian, and he is constantly just doing negative talk. He's such a downer, where he's saying, "Oh, this marriage," because these two characters he's talking to, "Oh, this marriage will never work. She hates him. He doesn't trust her. This is all going to go to hell." And then they're walking through the street, and he's like, "Oh, there's their child. He's probably going to be depressed or in prison later because he's got such a broken home," and so on. And like, there's just a few pages of that, and it's all very, like, just you can sort of feel how negative it is, and John can tell that this is not the Martian, that this guy is much worse than the Martian, and he's missing the Martian because of how much of this negative force is the entire time.
Well, and he even knows that this guy sucks, because he says that, like, the new partner, really sucks.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
He's working with.
He outright says it. He knows that this is like, if anything, this is just fueling his desire to find the Martian again. He's like, I need the old guy. But I thought I was frustrated with him being in my head all the time. But all of a sudden, like this negative voice is so much worse that I have to go and there's he goes to visit a prisoner who's on death row, because again, he's like, hey, did you dream about this green Martian or whatever? And like the voice in his head is like, oh, he's just thinking about how much it's going to hurt. Is it, people are going to be watching him die, and he was scared and so on. Like, it's just, very, very like hard hitting with its like, again, despair. His name is Despero. Like, there's a reason why we're doing this. So, but we also get the sense that all the operation stuff with the Martian is that they're looking for something. There is one scene where I don't even know how to interpret it other than just the characters who are doing the operation, which are the entities that are the toys, effectively, like one of them basically gets high off of like the Martian's energy, like it sort of reaches into his body, pulls out this like multicolored energy, breathes it in, and then kind of like collapses in like a euphoric state. I mean, it's the best way I could describe it. So you know, that's when it's getting kind of trippy. You're like, okay, but one of the things I do want to say here, though, and this goes for most of the issues of this book, is there's almost like an arc to every issue of this book where in the first half I'm like, this is really weird, I'm not sure how this is working, and then by the end of the issue it all pretty much makes sense. I mean, I'm not saying every detail makes sense, but it all fits together where I'm like, oh, I get what it was doing now. Like, because by the time we get to like the therapy stuff and it's intercutting with the kid playing with the operation game and all this stuff's happened to the Martian as John's in the therapy with his wife, because he thinks he's going to a group therapy with his wife and son, and then he's there and the son's in a different room, and it turns out the wife has told the therapist about him saying that there's a Martian in his head and that he hears voices. So now that's all the therapist wants to talk about, and it's like, oh, they think you're crazy, you're never going to see your son again, you know. You know, the wife says something like, oh, like he's been talking a bit more since you left, and then the Sparrow voice is like, yeah, she's saying that he's better without you. She's saying that you're a hindrance to him. Like, he keeps taking everything she's saying and the you know, it does that thing where like his bubbles are overlapping her bubbles to hide them, almost like the negative things getting in the way. Good visual storytelling.
Yeah, and the way that his text is like this sickly green too, and then we get to the, you know, when they get to the flashback of why, you know, he was sent out, right?
Why he was transferred
reassigned
from DC.
Yeah, transferred. Right. Everything has that sick greenly color to it as well, you know, with the lightning kind of strikes going through. So it also tells me too, like, we can't fully trust anything that has that color on it at this point, you know, because it's all this, you know, it's not quite right.
Well, again, this is the book introducing a new color scheme, right? We've got the multicolored thoughts, then we have the sort of the white, red, and blue, which was more the white Martians like version of that, and now we have the Sparrow's blue green kind of like, because even one point even says it out loud, like, hey, I'm going to show you a new color, like everything's, you know, bathed in blue. Yeah, and it's like, okay, all right, we're continuing the trends of what we're doing here. And there's some gorgeous visuals as well. Like, you know, there's a page where like they've cracked into the Martian's anatomy, and like just like all these like golden fireflies are like just flowing out of his stomach, and then like the bottom of the panel just you see the kid like playing the game of Operation, and you realize that this is kind of like, this is literally just happening in like the waiting area of this doctor's office where he's just doing this.
Yeah, and the white smoke's coming off of his eyes and stuff, right? So there's a bit of a creepiness there with it too, because it's all in black and white except for the red on his sweater and the red on the Operation nose, you know, the game that buzzes, you know, too. So that makes for a stark image. And then on the following page, one of those agents starts torching all those fireflies. So it's almost like, I was trying to find meaning in that, where it's like, the fireflies are like the beacon for John to find the Martian, and, you know, they got sent out and now these guys are taking care of it, because one of them eventually does reach John, right? You know, but like, what does all that mean? You know, there's so much going on there.
Yeah, it's like he's trying to reach John and give him a warning, or like say that he needs help or whatever. And, you know, we get like this idea that like he is getting more frustrated in this therapy session, to the point where you see the Sparrow's like figure like drawn on his face, and he's like completely in blue, almost like he's getting hit with a blue light. And you know, the wife's like saying, I'm desperate, John, you know, I don't know what to do, I was scared, that's why I've told the therapist all this stuff, let's work together. And the next page is this like over the top layout where it's all blue and green. It's like the Sparrow's completely taken over, and it even says the Sparrow vision here. And this is, you know, we're actually kind of like that may be the first time. That page at the top, it says the Sparrow, the white Martian, the green Martian. I think that's the first time he just calls him the Sparrow. So it's almost like it's becoming like, you know, the term here by now.
And just the way too that the green is dripping off of all the lettering, you know, like on the panels and the borders and all that type of stuff too. Like it's just like it's oozing, like it's like the slow takeover.
Yeah, and the wife's like, I'm doing this because I love you. Desparo's like, I don't love you, John. I never did. But notably, by the time we get to that part of the page, it doesn't really look like Desparo anymore. It looks like, this looks like it's like Desparo's like demonic version of the wife that he's sort of put into John's head. Like he's seen this like demon version of her now. But you also see the Martian yelling out Tyler, the son's name, which makes John run to the other room because he wants to see him. And when they do see him, like it's like he can see all the white smoke coming from his son, and we see it also sort of like floating over into like the wife and stuff as well. Like he can tell I think this is clear that John is aware by the end of this issue that the White Martian's like around his son. Like maybe he doesn't understand exactly that he's possessed or whatever it is, but he understands that influence is there and that they're in danger from the White Martian.
Yes.
So and the two, like, what's probably just two normal guys that work at this place come to like get him, but he sees like two big muscly orderlies who are going to drag him to a straitjacket room.
They look like Monster Men from Batman, right? Like
yeah.
And they're sickly green as well, and the therapist looks like this little like gremlin-y kind of figure, and you only know it's the therapist because of the pink hair that's introduced, and it's on her, and she has that big toothy smile, So yeah, it definitely is changing his perception of things. Just the way that everything's blue as well.
And honestly, at this point, I'm not even sure if he's actually like if we're just in his head now, because it's like he just runs to the side and he runs into his boss, and it's like, hey, I've got stuff going on with my wife and son, and the boss is like, who cares? And they look out the window and there's a firing squad killing people just outside the building. And it's just like, again, this idea of like the darkest possible like reality is kind of in his head, and he's seen all the worst of everything. And it's at the bottom of that page, Desparo says, "But you came to the wrong place. You see that now." And then just in a black panel, all black behind him, he says, "Yeah, okay, I can certainly see that." But then there's a single like black panel at the end of the page with just that one firefly. This idea that maybe one little part of the Martian is still trying to come and like tell him something, or like direct him or whatever, that the hope's still there. And then actually the panel in the next page is the one I was talking about earlier, where you see the white smoke from the sun going into the wife. Now whether or not that just represents influence or she's also been taken over by the White Martian, I think it's open for debate at this point, but
I definitely think that she's being wrapped up in like what Desparo's showing him is that everyone's turning against him, but from him showing him that it is because he's in the state, right? So that's how he's impacting everything. And so regardless of what happens, she has been influenced because she thinks that she's doing everything for the kid, right? And to her, John looks like a madman, right? For whatever the rambling, talking about Martians, this, that, and the other, the transfer that he's not being clear about, and all this other stuff. So he is truly alone, right? So when we see him here, she, on top of that page, she has the influence of the White Martian, and he has, Desparo on his shoulder as he's sitting in the bed by himself at the motel that he's been staying at.
Yeah, a really crappy looking motel room, by the looks of it. And he's again, it's all blue and green. And then there's one panel of like the operation on the Martian with all the bright colors like spilling out of him like blood. But you've got the two characters, the sort of gangster looking one, who is like saying, because the woman who's doing the operation is like, he's got a tether in the physical world, and he's like, is it American, this anchor? And she's like, yes, an FBI agent named John Jones. And it's like, I guess it never occurred to me they wouldn't know this already, but it's almost like this moment is the White Martian finding out that the human like person,
he's the host.
He's the host. Yeah, he's like, so all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, John's actually may be in danger now, because now the White Martian knows who to target. And that seems to be the cliffhanger here, is that a bunch of like rebel hippie looking dudes with rocket launchers and machine guns are going towards the motel. And I'm like, damn. And that one firefly is still kind of like on its way. So will the Firefly get to John in time and like give him enough of a help or warning or direction? I don't know, or hope or whatever this Firefly might give him.
So like the reason that so when I had to look up the actual definition of despair is because when I think of despair, I just think sadness, right? But the actual proper definition is the feeling of complete loss or abundance of hope, right? And then when you look about what the Fireflies tend to represent when we see them in media and storytellings, they're this light in the darkness, right? Usually when you see a Firefly, it's this one solo light in the dark, and that's what this is now.
It's literally panels of just black with this one Firefly in the middle, just, right, on its own,
and like a beacon or like a lighthouse, drawing in. As long as that little Firefly is still, going, right, John still has a chance. Because I feel like that's his connection to the Martian. Because as far as we know, the Martian's not a physical being. So wherever he's being vivisected, which, they're doing like pulling his parts out or whatever, wherever that's happening is on a much different plane.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we saw him get captured, quote unquote, last issue. And obviously that's what's led to all this. But yeah, it's like, he needs help, but also John's in trouble because of this influence. Right. And obviously the Sparrow was seemingly made last issue by the kid, or technically the White Martian through the kid, if you wait to look at it. But and then there's another panel at the beginning that really struck me is it zooms in on John's eye and you see the green Martian there. And then when it pulls out, there's a white Martian handprint covering the Martian's mouth, the green Martian. And then as it keeps pulling out, it's John's face. And it's just almost like everything with the green Martian is there, but it's being silenced. So it's almost like this intuition and everything. And then when John also finds out, like, he was selected by, or he was chosen by the green Martian. And the green Martian saved him at the coffee shop and that bomb went off. Right? That's something new to John. Yeah, so
like he never even had considered that. You know?
I guess the other thing to speculate here is like, because part of me thinks that the White Martian already knew about John's connection, and that's why the kid was chosen in the first place. Maybe that was happenstance. But it does make me wonder about these other entities, like the ones that are kind of the toys that the kid is playing with. Like, I said he created these things, but what if they're real entities and the kid's just kind of like representing them with toys in the same way that he had a toy for John and the Martian and whatnot.
There are definitely these concepts, I feel, because like one is called Agent High, and when we see Agent High, what's it doing? Right? It's taking that thing out of the Martian and getting what looks like higher than a kite off of it. Right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's these concepts just given form through the White Martian, and now they're trying to act, on, in conjunction with the White Martian. Yeah. And we know the White Martian represents anti-life through Darkseid, So these are things that eventually work towards that. And we felt like the gangster looking one was like that whole idea of patriotism, like the fanaticism behind it, which is why he asked, is it American? Along those lines. So again, sometimes this is too heady for its own good, but that's also what makes it work. Because I have no doubt that Dennis Camp will leave this in everything will become clear. It's just when we're getting piece by piece, it leaves me being like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, I mean, I disagree with that statement that it's too heady for its own good. I don't think it is. I think it's exactly as heady as it should be, and it is why it works the way it works. I mean, if nothing else, it absolutely feels like these entities, if not the White Martian like itself, has learned that John is the host or the conduit for the Green Martian, and therefore, like, that's why he's being targeted. So I think that the cliffhanger it leaves off on is good. It feels like we're at our darkest kind of almost to an extent before we get into this last act of the 12 issues. It feels like when they do get reunited, John and the Martian, it's going to feel like a big deal. It's going to feel like they're back at full strength, and maybe they can achieve something now. I care about the marriage. I care about that being fixed as well. So on an emotional, personal level, that they've got that side of things covered too, as far as like caring about that. And then obviously just the concepts and the art and the way that everything's got these color schemes. the way that this kind of bounced back and forwards of like the Martian being tortured while Desparow's talking in John's ear and ruining the marriage further, which I already care about that, so I feel invested when it's getting in the way and like making it worse. And you get frustrated at John for like overreacting when it's like, hey, yeah, I told her you said you're talking to an alien in your head because that's concerning. Which might make it very satisfying if at some point he proves it. I don't know if he will.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll solve it another way, like, and put her mind at ease by either lying or like figuring another way out. But either way, in the moment, it is this frustrating roadblock to get over, and but you don't hate him for it because you know he's telling the truth. No. You know it's true.
Right, and him seeing the therapist as someone standing in the way, despite the fact that she's actually trying to help, right? Because Bridget has no idea, right? Like, he just says that he's seeing this Martian. She has no idea any of this other stuff. She's just trying to help her husband, you know? And the way that despair turns it into that everybody's against him. His wife, his kid, the therapist, the orderlies, and all that type of stuff, and the way that plays out on top of everything. Yeah, when it finally comes to and she gets a glimpse of the Martian, right? Because like whatever happens to save the kid, I'm sure it will feel. It'll be like she'll be like, oh, he wasn't. He's been telling the truth the whole time, you know, and that'll I feel make their bond even stronger. So yeah, I feel like Camp is setting a lot of stuff in motion.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it going either way. I can see it going like she ends up finding out it's all true, or the way it'll play out when like the white Martian influence leaves her and the kid, like it'll just kind of more naturally kind of fit back together without her having to find out all that stuff was real. But either way, like it's got me invested in every side of it, and like the storytelling and the way it's representing these concepts. You know, every issue almost feels like it starts off being like, okay, what are we doing now? Am I following this? And then by like the second half of the issue, I'm like, oh no, this is all clicking together. Like I get what it's doing. And the fact that almost every issue makes me feel that way is a good. It means the storytelling, while being very inventive, is also doing a very good job of actually being like understandable. So, no, excellent stuff. I really can't praise it enough. So, Matt, what are you giving Absolute Martian Manhunter?
I'm gonna give this I'm gonna give it the 9. I was gonna give it the 8.5, but then a lot of the concepts, you know, coming around, you know, there's some clarity. So yeah, I'm gonna bump it up to the 9.
Yeah, I'm going 9.5.